SQ3R is an active reading strategy that empowers you to pay better attention, connect new material with what you already know, better understand what you read, easily summarize and reflect, and retain the information for faster and for longer. SQ3R stands for S, survey the text in advance. This is a pre-reading strategy. Q, form questions before you start reading. Also a pre-reading strategy. There are 3 R's. The first R stands for read and annotate the text. This is an active reading strategy. The second R stands for record and recite important points. Also an active reading strategy. The last R stands for review and reflect on the text after you read. Using this process is going to help you be a really wonderful reader. So the pre-reading strategies: survey the text in advance and ask questions. Let's break this down. Why does it matter? Pre-reading or going through these strategies will actually help you to activate prior knowledge. So activating prior knowledge is really important because it allows our brain to kind of warm up. And when we connect new information with information that we already know in our brain, the synapses that connects those things is going to be stronger, and it's going to make it easier for us to learn that information and to understand it. Step 1 is survey the text in advance. This should take you like 30 seconds. It's a quick skim of the text. You're going to read introductory paragraphs and headings, and your goal is to try to figure out what is the author's main point and what topics are going to be covered. You're going to look over the sidebars, just the photographs, any other text or graphic features. You're going to skim a few paragraphs, preview any bold-faced or italicized vocabulary terms, and you're going to skim the conclusion paragraphs. Why would we do this? If we think about how the brain learns information, then giving this information to your brain allows it to kind of earmark the most important points. If we think about how academic writing happens, it's pretty boring, right? It follows a very specific formula. You guys know this formula, you've heard it before. We're going to tell them what we're going to tell them, then we're going to tell them, then we're going to tell them what we told them, right? So if we think about that, then when we are skimming the introductory and conclusion paragraphs, we are noting in our mind the most important information. We're kind of giving our brains something to hold on to and to continuously come back and look for. It's also going to do something that I think is really important, and it's going to tell your brain how complex this piece of reading is. That's going to reduce anxiety, and it's going to tell your brain how much time you need to complete this assignment. I always say that you should survey the text as soon as you get it. So as soon as something is assigned, you should take a few seconds, literally 30 seconds, as soon as you get that article, and just scroll through it. Look at it. Look how complex the language is. Look how many pages it is. Look, see the number of, or the ratio of graphics to words. That's going to give you a better understanding of how much it's going to take for you to complete this reading. And it's actually going to make your brain set kind of like an auto timer in your head, so that as you're getting closer to that, you're going to start being aware, like, I really need to get started on this. It's also going to relieve that anxiety. Even if it's a really hard read, it will reduce the anxiety of the unknown. The known is always less scary than the unknown. So giving your brain the ability to just look at it and know what it's up against is really going to help you prepare yourself for the learning. The next part is in relation to this. So the second part, while you're doing that, you might as well take a couple of seconds and do step 2. That's form questions before you start reading. You could do this like right before you start reading, and it will have a great effect as well. But I'll explain why it's better to do it when you first get it here in a second. So as you're forming questions, ask yourself always, like, what do you expect to learn from the reading? Better, what does your professor expect you to learn from the reading? Because that matters, right? Like, yes, you want to learn things. And also, what are you expected to learn from this? The next one would be, what questions come to mind immediately based on your preview of the text? So as you're skimming, like, what questions are you already having? And then use headings and subheadings to formulate questions. this might seem kind of dumb and like a silly practice. Like, why am I going to take that heading and just, if it says the childhood brain, you could take that heading and turn it into how does the childhood brain work? Question mark. It seems dumb, but it actually gives your brain a task. It makes your brain start trying to find the answers to those questions. So the preview of the text, so surveying the text in advance and forming questions, if you do those two things right when you get your assignment, instead of procrastinating until it's like due and then you're panicking, your brain is going to start to go to work with figuring out what it already knows about the topic. It's going to investigate. It's going to be kind of annoying, but in like a really great way, where when you're talking to, your friends, or you're out in the workplace, or you're, seeing billboards as you drive down the street, anything related to these topics is going to start popping out at you, and your brain is going to just start kind of like stockpiling information about these topics. Then when you go back in to read it later, you're going to actually find that you're more interested and that you're able to understand it better. So keeping these things in mind, I would say if you're going to do this, you should do this. I'm not saying if you're going to do this, okay? And do it when you get it. As soon as you get that reading assignment, go ahead and just take a minute, skim, survey the text, do a quick survey of the text, ask yourself a couple of questions, jot them down if you can. Otherwise, ask them out loud on your mind, and then go about your life. And then when you sit down to actually read the article, you're going to feel a lot more prepared. All right, let's get into what that looks like. Great. So there are several active reading strategies in SQ3R. This is why I love this method so much, because it's not just one thing. It is literally the entire reading process, pre-reading, active reading, and post-reading, all mashed into one with some really powerful strategies. So the two active reading strategies in SQ3R are read the text and annotate, and record and recite. Let's get into reading the text. Okay, when we read and annotate the text, you're going to notice whether your first impressions of the text were correct. You're going to look for answers to your earlier questions. You're going to revise your impressions and questions as you read, and you're going to make notes in the margin or within the text itself. That's called annotating. It's important to note that annotating is not highlighting. Highlighting does not help you. It does not, it just makes your pages really colorful, which is great. If you're very strategic, you could use different colors to denote different things, but it still doesn't have the kind of powerful, powerful strategies that you could have if you adjust your annotations just a little bit. So I'm going to show you a way that I annotate that will hopefully help you, use your annotations as a system to really allow you to really learn the information and to be able to index that information to go back to very quickly. Because what I hate is when I read a paper or read an article and then I have to write a paper, and now I'm going back through the article trying to find that information again, and I've lost it. I have to basically reread the article, and that's terrible and a total waste of my time. So instead, we want to work smarter, not harder. And so when you annotate, let's make sure that we're being strategic. We're not just randomly underlining important information. In academic articles, there's a lot of important information. They think it's important. That's why they put it in there, right? It's not fluff. This is not a novel where it's like, let me use 8,000 descriptive words. That's not what's happening here. So we can't just say we're going to underline the most important information. Instead, you're going to maybe write some brief summaries in the text margins. You might list or number multiple ideas. You could sketch some pictures or draw charts to explain difficult processes or concepts. You might predict or write possible test questions. But I want you to think about using these particular items, or looking for these particular items. Number one, anytime the author defines something in the text, I use a little asterisk next to it to say, this is the author's definition of a thing. So if they say, metacognition is thinking about your thinking. Okay, I'm going to note, this is what the author says. So I'm going to put a little star by that. And that way I can always go right back to what the author actually said about a concept, especially when I'm having a hard time grappling with that concept. Anytime I see a list, if there's features, cause and effects, characteristics, reasons, anything like that, I'm just going to pull that list out and I'm going to put it in the margin. I'm just going to list them in the margin. And that way, that list is really easy to find because a lot of times those things are really valuable and important. Um, Anytime a proper name or date or an event that's listed or is referenced is that's important, I'm going to underline that. And like, if I'm going to be a really rock star student, I'm actually going to go look that up to see what the context is. Like, why are they referencing this person or this philosophy or this event in time that happened, right? What's the connection and the correlation? So I'm going to underline that. Notice that I haven't underlined anything else in my text yet. I'm not underlining important information. I'm going to explain why here in a minute. Also, as I'm going through, anytime the author gives me an example, I'm going to put a big EX in the margin. And that's important because anytime the author gives an example, I can use that exact same example, but like trade it out for things in my own lived experience, right? So I'm basically going to use their example as a model for my own. So I'm gonna pull something out of my own lived experience and just swap it out. And now I can put that in my own writing, be like, haha, here's an example from my own personal life. Great. So I'm gonna put EX in the margin. Anytime the author summarizes their own writing, I put a big, one of those big fancy brackets, I put a big fancy bracket because that is what I go back to just before I walk into class or when the teacher is like, hey, we're going to pull out this chapter so that you can remember what you read. I'm just going to go straight back to that point because honestly, I don't got time to remember all this crap, right? So this is going to be the great summary of the passage or of a part of it. I'm going to go right back to that because the author is literally giving it to you right there. They're giving you the most important points. So putting that bracket there is like, hey, go back to this when you need to remember what the heck this was about. Great. And then, of course, anytime I don't understand something, it doesn't make sense, I'm going to put question marks so that I can either look it up or I can ask my professor. I'm also going to circle any words that I do not know, and I am going to look them up. I'm going to write the definition. I'm going to put it in the margin. Why am I going to do that? Number one, so that I can better understand the passage. Obviously, duh. Number two, because I have been told, you've been told, everybody's been told that the number of words in your vocabulary directly relates to how much money you make, and I like money. You do too. So just do it. Also, because it will help you understand the text. Thank you. Okay. You're going to notice that at no point in here have I told you to do anything with the most important information. And that is because that is really something that you need to actually take note of and do a little bit of extra work with. Any of the key points, any of the most important information is going to fall under step 4, that record and or recite the text. And it's record really, and if you want to, you could also recite the text out loud. But basically what you're going to do is, as you're reading, anything that is said that is the most important points, those are the things that by hand, not copy and paste, not even typing, but by hand, take notes and actually physically write the most important information down. Put it into 2 different ways. The first way is recording information verbatim, word for word from the text, exactly what the author said. We do this by hand because the physical, actually holding the pen or the pencil and the physicalness of writing connects to our brain in a different way. So if we are physically writing it down, it's different than when we read it. We're going to remember it better. And bonus points if you recite it out loud while you are recording it. So if you're writing down the SQ3R is, right, and you're saying it out loud, your brain is learning it or is getting that information in 3 different ways. Number 1, when your eyes had to look at it and actually read it and what the brain process that happens in there to understand it. Number 2, when your brain has to think about it and use physical actual muscles to form the letters to write it. And now when you speak it, the words or the muscles used to move your mouth, plus it's going to go into your ears and you're going to hear it again. So it's like a really great way to remember information. So in the actual annotations, you are noting very specific things that are strategically to help you go back and find things. It's kind of giving yourself clues or, marks like you would find on a map to help you redirect yourself to where that information is so that you can go back and find it really easily. Then you're going to record the most important things, the most important information exactly as it's stated in the text, and that is for the purpose of helping you to remember it. And part of that record is also then to pause and write a summary of the passage or the chapter when you are done. You're going to summarize it, this time in your own words. We're going to do that in our own words because it helps us to better understand the concepts and to better learn and to remember it. So if we think about how we learn information, this is a part of an elaborate rehearsal process to help us better understand and better learn the information. So again, step 4 has 2 parts. It is recording the most important information in the words of the author, word for word, directly from the text, and then translating and putting it into now full sentences as a summary in our own words of the entire chapter. What is this chapter about? We're going to write a good summary. Finally, you are going to do the post-reading strategies, which is to review and reflect on the text after you read. So pause for a minute and go back over your notes. Look at them. Can they guide you towards deeper learning, towards the information that you need possibly for a paper or to study for a test? Are they complete? Reviewing that information is super helpful. It's going to just refresh your brain on it, right? Of course, reflecting on it is a very important skill set. So when you reflect, you want to think about, did anything surprise you or make you think? Did you find yourself strongly agreeing or disagreeing with anything in the text? What topics do you want to explore further? If the article or chapter has questions for reflection, go through those questions instead of the ones that I have listed for you here. But always take a minute to reflect and say, what am I taking away from this learning that is going to help me either in my academic or professional or personal life, or that I just find interesting? So what are you going to take away from this and why does it matter? If you do these things, you are going to be a better, more engaged reader. You're going to better remember and understand what it is that you've read, and you're going to find more enjoyment in it as well. You won't be so frustrated. Quick review, SQ3R. Step 1, survey the text in advance. This is a pre-reading strategy. Number 2, question or form questions before you start reading. Again, pre-reading. Do both of these things as soon as you get the article or chapter assigned, and it's going to make you more effective, I promise. Number 3, read and annotate the text. Again, we are not highlighting, we are actively reading, and we are looking for very specific things to make this functional for use in academic purposes. Step 4, record and or recite important points. You're going to record all of the important points in the words of the author. Then you're going to write a summary of the text in your own words. Finally, you're going to review all of the annotations and all of the text that you read, and then you're going to reflect on the text after you read to pull out, what did I learn, what do I need to retain, and how can I move forward using this information for the betterment of my academic, personal, or professional goals. SQ3R is your all-around, one-stop shop for becoming an active and engaged reader. I suggest that you use it every time that you're in a classroom, whether in this one or the next.